Right? Yeah. Welcome to Mind Control Canada, guys. How you guys doing? I'm Andreas. How did you get up there? Calm down. That's just a lot to handle. Hey, so I'm Andreas Nicholas, but you've heard of me as Xirtus. That's like the way it is. But I'm really excited about Canada. I'm not from Canada. I just really am enthusiastic. You can call me a fanatic. So I wanted to bring some experts on the panel here to tell us a little bit more about the depth of Canada and what it really is. Danny Polishchuk, how you doing?
I'm good.
You're from Canada, right?
I am from Canada.
So crazy.
Well, Montreal, isn't it?
No, I'm from Toronto.
Oh,
yeah.
Toronto, so center of the universe.
There it is. There it goes. And then Ryan's Canadian. Ryan, tell us, how Canadian are you, Ryan?
Well, I was born in Alberta. I was raised in BC, did the military on the Vancouver Island, and then I lived in Quebec for 6 years, and I've been in Toronto now for 6 more.
Dang, that's like a day in the life of Nickelback Demisevic. That's very, very Canadian. I feel
coast to coast.
Whoa. Vince, you're pretty Canadian, right? Are you? Your mic?
Sure.
Tell me about how Canadian. You're kind of a francophone Canadian, right? A Quebecer, eh?
Yeah. So born and raised in Quebec. Lived in Montreal for 5-6 years. Been hovering around Montreal most of my life, and I'm very French Canadian, but right in the middle. My dad's French, my mom's English. So.
Oh, that's a hybrid. That's pretty futuristic. And
yeah, I'm a heretic in my own place, basically. So.
My word, Jordan. I don't know if you're able to. You can hear me, Jordan. Are you Canadian?
Yes, I am.
This feels kind of like the Captain Planet experience. All right, so let me just say, like, as a fan, because it's kind of like going to one of those like conventions. I want to start around, and I know, Ryan, you have a little bit less time because you're going to an airport because they work Canadians harder. I don't know if you know this, but a Canadian's value is 72% of that of a woman or something in labor. It's like a
3/5. Yeah.
It's a big deal. But so, Ryan, can you start by telling us a little bit about like what's like you had to be in Canada, or you had to be Canadian?
Well, you guys had me beat because that first one was the train people. So I'll talk about the salmon arms. Hello. You guys probably know this one, don't you? At least the West Coasters do. So there's this town, Salmon Arm, in British Columbia. Mr. Trudeau's dad went down there, did a train tour across there with little Justin in tow. And I guess as he was going to Salmon Arm, he was talking a lot of trash about the Western provinces and talking very well about the Eastern provinces. So some Puritans at the time put up a sign asking him to have some decorum. And so he flipped the town a Salmon Arm, the middle finger.
And this was the rudest thing a Canadian's ever done.
Well, that's like the prime minister flipping off an entire town, asking them to like act more mature. And so I guess they started every port from then on, where every stop that Via Rail was taken, they'd slapped eggs and tomatoes and crap all over his thing. And it's like Trudeau is hated west of like Winnipeg. Like, I know you see on the news, like half like, they hate him here.
Interesting.
And so, yeah, that's the Salmon Arm. That's the Salmon Arm Trudeau story. You had to be here for it. Like, I don't even think, like, you guys call your presidents Nazis every 4 years, but I don't think any one of you guys has had him tell you to go pound sand.
I mean, Biden did flip off a guy before the debates, or during, before he was president. But, I don't think he knew what he was or where he was going with that. I don't know. Danny, can you think of something like, I mean, you made that movie, about how Canadian you can be. Filth City, is that right?
Yeah, Filth City.
Right? Yeah, man.
I mean, maybe that's not, I don't want to tell you what direction to go with this, but like, tell me something about Canada. Tell me you had to be Canadian experience. Give me something.
You had to be Canadian. Honestly, my one go-to, because it's this movie from when I was a kid. Maybe nobody's even heard of it, but it was this very Canadian movie that some people know. It's called The Peanut Butter Solution. It was, I don't know, it's just like one of the things that just so sticks out. Have you seen Pentaveret?
Yes.
You know how like when they're in Canada it looks different?
Right, yeah,
like the world looks different. I don't know, that's kind of like how this movie was a bit, and that's my memory of the 80s is almost in that like Canadian filter.
We been talked about the peanut experiment last time. Vince, that's for a hybrid Franco-Anglophone, I think that movie's interesting because they put Quebecers in it, but they're the bad guys. You know, like the guy's got an accent, so he's scary and he wants to put your kids in the paintings. You know what I mean? That's a weird thing.
I don't know. There's some weird movies that they've made that are like sort of trying to heal the French and English divide. Like we have one that's Bonk Bad Cup. So it takes English people, and then you have a French cop, and then they kind of try to solve a crime that is done by someone who is like someone who lacks identity. Like they're neither they're neither English Canadian or French Canadian. Like they're kind of like me basically. So it's like they take a French cop and an English cop, and then they fight the bilingual guy. So it's really fucking dumb.
Every time.
They made a sequel to that too, actually.
I liked it because it was like, oh man, the Netflix
Last
thing.
few years.
Jordan, what about you? Tell me something you had to be Canadian to experience.
Fuck, I'll tell you something from Thunder Bay. I think you have to be in Thunder Bay specifically.
Tell us about Thunder Bay.
Thunder Bay.
I'm
Thunder
living
Bay
in Toronto
is
now.
an amazing name for a place, Thunder Bay.
Living in Toronto now, but I'm born and raised in Thunder Bay up until a couple of years ago. And I mean, a lot of racism, some corrupt cops, a lot of bullshit.
Definitely not the direction I was thinking you were going. I was like, there's going to be thunder and lightning coming off.
Dude, Roadhouse, if it was Canadian, would be Thunder Bay.
Oh, yeah?
On it, holy fuck, dude. Essentially, yeah, like slightly less redneck and a little bit more inbred, and you got Thunder Bay.
Are there vampires or mermaids or like anything about Thunder Bay that sticks out?
Just we have
Flannel
Native Americans that are down on their luck, so to speak, and but
it's like 5 hours from here in Minnesota. You can drive there. It's like our Tijuana, I guess. I don't know. I mean, it seems weird. That leaves out though Kurt and I, because we're not Canadian, but I'm going to cheat. I want to bring up something that I saw about Canada, which is almost as good. Who is Carla Homolka? I know you guys are all you guys are so nice, aren't you? Super nice, super nice in Canada. Well, let me just tell you, we found out about that Canadian conspiracy. It's all hiding Carla Homolka, right? So what is this? She and her husband were like preying on. What do you guys know about this? What do you guys hear about the?
He was the Scarborough Strangler, I think?
The Scarborough Strangler. What?
Yeah, man.
So what's this deal?
The girl who went to one of the girls who went to my high school, or one of those girls went to my high school.
What?
Like one of the victims?
That's horrible.
Victims. There's actually a crazy story. So I think it's go up. I think it was Chris in front. It's Chris. Go scroll up. The photos. Oh no, sorry. Scroll down or down. Sorry. There's the photos of the two girls that they killed. Oh, I don't know. It was just on the screen. Anyways, I can't remember. I think it was Kristen French, maybe. No. It's none of those. It's not of her. There was the photo of the victims.
Oh, here it is. Here's right. This guy. This picture here.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure
man.
the one on the left. That photo on the left. That's the girl. She went to my high school because that photo was in our library. Specifically that photo. But so it's a crazy story. So she was neighbors with a friend of mine, and she was in I think grade 9 and went out, and her mom was like, be back by 10 o'clock or whatever, or I'm locking you out. And she came home late, and her mom's like, no, you're past your time or whatever, like you're locked out. And then she was just like went wandering around, and they picked her up.
Oh man.
Oh, that's got to hit different.
Isn't that crazy?
Ooh.
Yeah. So I mean, this is like crazy. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, look up Robert Picton then when you're done with this one.
Right. Oh man. I don't know how to spell his name.
This is like Mad Max shit. He was feeding them to the pigs.
Dude, and he had like jazz shows, right?
Yeah. And the Highway of Tears was all up.
Was
on
this in Manitoba?
No, this one's in Vancouver.
Yeah.
Oh shit, I've never heard of this one. Or wait, maybe I have. This guy looks familiar.
Yeah, I mean, like
looks like anyone in Thunder Bay.
American movies do not live up to Canadian realities. I'm starting to realize a lot of the time. There was also the Canadian MK Ultra stuff, right? You said it's like brainwash, the echoes of MK Ultra. During the Cold War, the CIA secretly funded mind control experiments on unwitting Canadians in a program codenamed MK Ultra. Experiments
in Montreal.
Right. Yeah. So what's the deal with that? So when we think about, MK Ultra in Canada, like, is that like a serious thing? I mean, we just looked at a few mind control sounding people that
we look at it the same, I think, as you guys for the most part.
Yeah.
I think
elaborate, eh?
Well, I mean, like, what do you mean by like, how do we see it? Like, I think we kind of look at it, and I mean, from our point of views, I think we kind of look at it and see it for what it is in the same light.
On that note, Ryan has to escape the conversation before he's caught dead with these kind of crazy people. But I hope that plane is safe. I hate saying it like that. I'm gonna knock on some wood right here.
Thank you very much. Nice meeting you all. Danny, loved you guys when you were here in Toronto last. Thunder Bay, dude. The memories. I love it. All right, talk to you guys later.
Yeah, we'll talk later, bro.
Yeah, I mean, so but like in general, I guess that was a really broad question, but Canada seems a lot more heavy than people pretend. I guess I've always kind of had that feeling. There was this video I was watching. Is this gonna play music? Can you hear this? Can you hear that?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
The Shad Man.
Tonight, we will prove that these performers have been trained by the Canadian government to infiltrate and take over the American entertainment industry. We'll examine the careers of these people and the profound effect each has had on the minds of unsuspecting Americans. Finally, we will confront these so-called entertainers with documented evidence of their direct involvement with the Canadian conspiracy.
Yeah, what do you guys think? Canadian conspiracy. Is that just you guys just playing a joke?
What's the conspiracy?
I mean, it seems like dude, Canadians are going to take
if they're
over.
all together, then it's a conspiracy, sure.
Well, okay, so the first thing is like you look in the Winnipeg royalty, right? So Winnipeg was the messenger center for Canada. It's where all the trade and all of the transatlantic, transpacific rails and cables would connect. It was the mercurial messenger, right?
The mint is there.
Right?
Mint is there as well.
So, I mean, there's a kind of weird thing about Winnipeg and like a group of British royals that are in Winnipeg. I mean, it feels like that's a specific group. What do you guys think? Do you think Canada has royalty like the South Park?
I mean,
Well, we have
Gretzky.
we definitely have actual royalty that lives here because I mean we're just part of the Commonwealth. So for sure that there's plenty of connections with Masonic halls and you know the Masons are here and they're basically just adjacent to the Scottish and English Freemasons. So
how generationally deep are you guys in Canada? Danny, how many generations are you in Canada?
I'm first generation.
First generation. Where'd your dad and your mom come from?
Russia.
Oh, all right. And so how did they come? What was if you mind telling us a bit about how they got to Canada and immigrated?
I think when they were living in Russia, they just opened up the borders and they I don't know exactly how they got to Canada. I think they applied, to just get out of Russia and countries were taking people and they went, just Canada accepted them. They actually went straight to Winnipeg is where they went and they stayed a year and they hated it and they left.
Winnipeg does seem like very specific. I mean,
yeah, I've never been there actually.
Jordan, you're Thunder Bay born, but how long have your family been in Canada?
My mom's side is, I think, third generation so I would be third generation from Scotland, essentially.
Right. There's a lot of Scots in Canada.
Yeah, there's a fair amount for sure. Absolutely.
Dude, everybody and kids in the hall. I mean, God. I mean.
But I mean, Thunder Bay's packed with Finn, Polish, and a fair amount of French.
Right.
And then my dad's side is French. I think going back 4 or 5 generations, give or take, if I'm not mistaken. So,
Vince, what about you? You said you're back and forth, French and English?
Yeah, well, I'm a hybrid. I'm like part Irish, part Scottish, French, native. So I have a mix of a whole bunch of stuff, and probably some stuff that I don't know. Maybe I'm part Jewish or something, and that's why we changed our last name. But when I migrated, we changed from McGowan to Smith, and McGowan just means son of Smith. So they were sort of lazy and changing it from Irish to English. But we sort of lost our family crest and our family, like the idea of clans over time got slowly degraded, and so we all come from Irish clans that survived for hundreds of years together, being close, and then that slowly that identity got slowly eroded and replaced with Canadian identity or French Quebecer identity or whatever way they can to divide us, basically.
Yeah, man. I mean, so this is the English Peace Tower, dominates the center block structure of the Canadian Parliament building. Somebody did a Tartaria mud flood deep dive. I think it was Deciphering the Devil's Details, if you want to check out his channel. Parliament Hill excavation uncovers pre-Confederation military complex, CBC News. Now, this is interesting. A 19th century barracks built on top of pre-Confederation military complex. And so they started doing some digging and found, hey, yeah, there's actually a lot of these structures are built right on top of old ruins from whatever was existing in Canada before that, which seems crazy because you think, hey, Canada, there's basically nothing there except for these like few major cities or something to that effect, the way it's been described to us. Yeah, there's trees, but there's all these super star forts. Where was that Fort Edward, right? So if you look at Fort Edward, LiDAR, they did a LiDAR scan recently and like, oh, wait, it's right on top of a bastion fort, which has been buried away and been washed away by the sands of time. But this is what's left right now in Fort Edward. There's another one, Fort Catherine. There's a few other of these star forts.
What is that? What's a bastion fort?
So bastion fort's one of these star forts. It's a fort that's with these particular points to it, right? And so specifically, it was popular in the Cordoba Caliphate and places that were connected to Arabia that were really super into geometry. And then the Italians got into them in the 15th century. So if you find them after the 15th century, it's possible they're built by Renaissance people, from Italy. But if you find them before that, it's likely that they're from the East, not the West. And the idea that the Russians were connected with the Iranians and they had this sort of Tartarian empire that extended even into the West and had these star forts. Well, we have all of these stories of the natives interacting with these people before being conquered, essentially, right? You got a group of people that conquer and take over. And then you've got this new Canadian culture that's been created, right? I mean, you guys like Degrassi. This will be the time where I bring up Degrassi. What do you guys think about Degrassi?
Love it.
Never was into it personally.
Well, I watched the original one, not anything after that. But
I'm a big fan of all of it. I can't help myself. But Jordan, why?
Yeah,
Of course. But why were you not? Why did you like to watch this? Because it wasn't connected to you, connectable?
I was just huge into Batman, Seinfeld, and James Bond growing up. So like at a young age. So
see, like Degrassi felt so
a lot on that.
It felt so real. I guess maybe Batman is a maybe if you're in it, you want to be Batman. That's fair. I get that. But I mean, the original Degrassi is very different than the new Degrassi. The original Degrassi, it's all about first generation Canadians that don't have any money because their parents don't have any money, right? And then the next generation Degrassi, they have Saabs that are convertibles and lots of money. So it's a little bit less approachable, but it's still an amazing example of building Canadian culture. I think that's it comes into relevancy when you think about C11. Have you guys been paying attention to C11?
The internet bill?
Right. Yeah. What do you guys think of that?
I haven't been following that.
So imagine that if you're a Canadian YouTuber and you want to be on the Canadian YouTube channel, that you have to be more Canadian.
Yeah, that's kind of how it is with everything else. Like radio and television, at least, or no, it is not. It was. It is. So I guess they're just trying to do that for the internet. It is ridiculous because, why not just let the best stuff win? Like, it makes sense for TV because you're like, yeah, the Canadian like entertainment industry could not compete with the American. Just it's impossible. But for like YouTube videos, like everybody's on pretty level playing field.
Well, you've been across the board on all of these things, so you're kind of more of an expert. Can you explain, like, why is it that Canada couldn't compete with America otherwise?
Because, like, to produce a 13 episode, like, TV show, like, a new TV show, it costs millions, like, $15 million, $10 million or something. And then most of them are busts, and, like, it's a small country. Like, it's only 30 something, 5 million, 36 million, I think. I don't know what it is right now, but it's small. It's a tenth the size. And then America's just like cranking out the stuff, which is competition, like, so not that you can't do it, but a lot of stuff. I know tons of people who like would not be able to work if it wasn't for like in that field, if it wasn't for the government.
Right. I mean, so this is interesting because the Canadians made laws in like the 30s or 40s, afraid that if they didn't do something soon and start to perpetuate Canadian culture, that it would be swallowed up by other cultures. Right. So, I mean, what is Canadian culture then? What has been created? Is it real? I mean, is it diagnostic or is it prognostic? Is it prescriptive? Is it based on what they want Canada to be, or is it based on your experience?
Well,
yeah, I don't know. Go ahead.
along came a show called Trailer Park Boys at some point, and that one was far more reflective of the realities of Canadian culture, because I mean, it actually showed the underbelly aspect and the part that, you know, you had a bunch of stoners and drug users that they reflected the, I guess, the more earthly aspect of our culture, as opposed to Degrassi, which sort of sugar-coated it or washed it down. And Trailer Park Boys has been around for a long time, and people weren't too happy about it at first, but over time it became kind of a staple of our culture, because I mean, it's more real than any of the other things that we've really tried to show. And we also have equivalents in Quebec, like we have a show called Les Bougons, and it's all about French people just trying to scam each other all day. That's it. That's all they do. They live on checks from the government.
What's it called?
Les Bougons. LESBOG. Yeah, there you go. And like this is the equivalent of basically French Quebec or Trailer Park Boys.
This looks good. I want to see it.
It's like it's passing through.
It's actually super well written and one of the best French Quebec shows, because it really, like, you know, had a lot of social commentary and just kind of broke the illusion that Canada is all hunky dory. These two shows together, you know.
What's that other one? Letterkenny or something like that?
Letterkenny is the shit.
Yeah. What do you guys think about Letterkenny? Is Letterkenny trying to exploit the efforts of Trailer Park Boys, or is it real?
No.
Is it legitimate and authentic?
I mean, Letterkenny came about straight like just these two dudes. They just made like a YouTube like video essentially.
Letterkenny Problems. That was what it was called.
Letterkenny Problems. They just made it like you know. This is kind of one of the almost like more fair stories that you hear in
nice
TV, because like they just made this. They were like somewhat successful actors in Canada, but they just made this 2 or whatever 3-minute video, and it just went super viral, and then they got a TV show out of it.
Well, like he does very extended but precise rants in them, like all the time, and with like people will say it's very, very Canadian humor in terms of how like quick it is, I would say. But big fan of the show.
It's got heart.
Yeah.
Danny, you said you didn't know, but how do you feel? Do you feel like culture in Canada? I mean, as someone who's worked in the industry, do you feel like it's a culture that's prescribed by the government, or is it a culture that describes what's going on in Canada with you?
I mean,
well, they have a group called the Meth Heads. Like they literally is like, yeah, those are the drug addicts over there.
Yeah,
so,
right.
In the show. You're saying that show or just TV?
No, you're in life and television, media, and it seems like what CN11 is going to do to the internet.
Yeah. I mean, not any more so than YouTube. Like, yeah, there are Canadian shows, but most of them are meant to look like American shows with no discernible difference, so that they can be sold in America, which happens. So those are just kind of blend in. There are obviously these like distinct Canadian shows, and then everything that CBC makes, which is all like
Little Mosque on the Prairie.
It's just all so bad. But I mean,
Schitt's Creek was good.
I've seen a lot of Little Mosque on the Prairie.
Schitt's Creek was good, but sorry, Schitt's Creek was good, yes. But the thing with Schitt's
Creek was like the only good thing.
Is like they brought in all these super famous Canadian actors who are famous in America. Like they left, they became famous in America for 30 years, and then they.
Yeah,
well, that's
then
they
came back.
That's the
like,
metaphor.
They're like, we made this amazing Canadian thing. And you're like, yes, technically, like Letterkenny, Trailer Park Boys, those are truly like Canadian things. Like, they didn't go get some star from the US, but like that's fucking Kevin McAllister's mom.
Right. But these are Canadians, aren't they? They're from Canada.
They're Canadian, of course.
I mean, that's kind of the conspiracy in the Canadian conspiracy. It's like, get the best Canadians, have them take over the media, and then bring it all back to Toronto, and then eventually Hollywood will dissipate because it's controlled by Canada. I mean, right?
That ain't happening.
Oh, you don't think so? I think they work together. If anything, I mean, to say that Canada is trying to take over America or vice versa.
Just the media. Like if the world media was run out of Canada, I mean, you've got social subsidies, you've got infrastructure, you have decent universities that are putting kids out. I mean, Disney tried to do this themselves, and they ended up working with Nelvana because they have enough problems with CalArts in Valencia, California, right?
Yeah. but you know, it feels like MK Ultra America versus MK Ultra Canada. They're two different brands, and so you have like it's like two different experiments over generations to see different outcomes based on different brainwashing techniques, basically.
Right.
But to go into one guy, we have a guy called Mike Ward in Canada, in Quebec, who's a French comedian, and he was actually on Joe Rogan podcast. He does English shows as well, and he got in huge trouble with the Canadian government, with the Human Rights Commission, because he made a joke about a certain child, Petit Jérémy, who has handicaps, and the guy's deaf, and he was just made into a singer, so they had him singing everywhere, but you know he's deaf,
like
so he can't.
Kid.
Yeah, Make-A-Wish kid. He sang for the Pope. You know, he sang.
Well, that's different.
John.
Make-A-Wish, it's his wish. That's not the same as just like, I mean,
Oh,
if
yeah,
they were
yeah.
making.
No. But they put him on camera. You know, they put him in front of like millions of people over and over and over. And so Mike Ward's joke is essentially like, you know, when's he gonna die? They said he would die within a few months, but he's been here for 20 years or something. And so he got in trouble for it, and he had to pay like a few dozen G's for it, went to court and everything, and it was a huge deal. You know, it was ongoing for almost like 15 years, and yeah,
Is that kid?
He didn't end up paying.
That kid's still alive. Yeah, he got thrown out by the judge. So,
well, didn't get thrown out by the judge. He had I was like some mutual friends with him and stuff. He had a $45,000 settlement against him by the government for this joke about this kid that he made while he was like doing a show in Quebec, like a private gig. It wasn't even on TV. A reporter was reviewing the show and wrote about this joke. Then the family finds out about it. Then they take him to whatever, the Human Rights Tribunal. They find against him for, it was like 40 something thousand dollars. And then he's like, on principle, he's like, I'm not paying this. He could easily afford to. And then he ended up fighting it, and he had to go to the Supreme Court of Canada. And like, he ended up spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on his lawyer in order to do this. But he's huge. Like, he just did a podcast at the Bell Center in Montreal, which is the size of Madison Square Garden, like for a podcast. Like, it's crazy. But then he
like
had
a live podcast.
Yeah, him and Pantelis. And, yeah. I don't know if it was like live stream, but yeah, it was like a live podcast, like in front of in front of 20,000 people. Pretty crazy.
I hear you.
He had to go like prove why his joke was funny to the Supreme Court of Canada.
Oh, God.
That's an hour special right there, man.
But you know, it's sort of telling of how the government tries to regulate speech, regulate what we think, and how we communicate with each other. You know, a comedian can't make a crude joke because they want they want Canada to be a certain level of clean, especially in public. Like when you're a public persona and you go on screen and then you say things, you're talking on behalf of Quebec or behalf of Canada, and so they're like, well, we can't have crude jokes. Yeah. And they have they try to regulate comedy by having comedy schools where they're like, this is how you have to be funny, this is how you make good jokes, and it's all very, very structured and limited. But
there's a lot of improv.
Yeah. Well, there's people who push those limits and push those boundaries, but once you have them on TV, they tend to fit very much so within a certain box that they're told.
Yeah, they want the CBC is just going for super diverse, super safe, but I mean, it's the CBC. Their target audience is probably like a 60-year-old woman, like legitimately. Like, they're not trying to rock the boat.
So what's the solution? I'm gonna pull up also your show, Phil City. Let me see if I can get that going.
What's the solution to what? I mean, you just got to make stuff. Especially.
But how did you get along through making a show like Phil City?
This was like it was a whole fucking thing. But
I mean, I don't think that they loved you for it.
Well, no, just the Ford family didn't like us, but but everybody else liked us.
Well, okay, because Americans are watching this. Let's explain a little bit. What did you do? What did you do, Danny?
So there was mayor of Toronto, famously Rob Ford, who got caught smoking crack, and
in the hood
with these guys who wound up dead. And
Rob
turned into a bit of a thing.
Oh, I don't know.
Not Rod. Hot Rod.
I know better.
That's him.
Yeah.
Rest in peace. If you want to see a
Yeah.
really funny video, go watch him.
Yeah, look up some Rob Ford. If you're
On
sick of Trump
Deadmau5.
videos, look up
On
some Rob
Deadmau5.
Ford videos.
Him and Deadmau5 is like pretty hilarious. Whoa. In his Ferrari.
Wow. And it's
Probably
like
like-
actually hanging out
Oh,
with the
I've
real
never
dead
even
mouse.
seen this. Shit.
Yeah, so Deadmau5 lives in Toronto, and he has this Ferrari he calls the Ferrari because it's like a Nyan cat, like wrap on it.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
anyways, he had this show where he would go get coffee with like a guest, and it was like a podcast basically.
Oh my god. And then Seinfeld stole the idea, I feel like, probably.
Yeah, see, that's the car.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
crazy.
I gotta look that up. That looks okay. How long is it, Danny? And like, what do they get into?
I think it's like half an hour. They talk about at least 20 minutes. So they talk about all sorts of shit. But anyways, when we made this sketch about we made a Filth City like short film. I don't even remember. It was about a bad, you know what? It was like a bad crack bust. I like honestly now I'm like trying to think of it, and it was like a bust gone bad. This cop thing that like my friend Andy was like, "Hey, I want to do this," and then we did it. And his brother has a production company, and he's like, "Hey, I think we sold this movie." Because it was, but it was about this mayor. Like they obviously made it like more topical, and they're like, we're gonna do this because it was like such a big story at the time. And then they sold it to this thing called Super Channel, which is kind of like a pay TV, like HBO. And then like as we're starting production, they go bankrupt, and then they had to do all this shit. It was a fucking mess. But
I mean, do you think that they went bankrupt just because of ineptitude, or was there someone who was like, "Don't make a movie about Rob Ford"?
no,
right
they didn't
now?
go bankrupt from this. They
No.
were like a big channel, and they constantly go bankrupt.
Oh, okay, that's fair.
Danny.
So this is good though. It's a great show, and so like it breaks a lot of the rules when you think about what you're supposed to be allowed to say. I feel like that happens. What do you think? How hard is it?
I mean, the thing is, we were just kind of doing the almost like the Law and Order thing where you go, we don't explicitly say it's Rob Ford, but you kind of know it's Rob Ford. But yeah, my brother was not happy about it.
That's brilliant. So yeah, you avoid certain words
So
essentially.
good.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, there's like if you search like Rob Ford or Doug Ford CP24, go search that Doug Ford CP24 Filth City.
Nice. And shout out to Kevin Soldo. I fucking love Kevin Soldo, my boy.
Yes.
For a video.
Ford says makers of Filth City shouldn't cross the street when he is driving down the road. This is I remember thinking, I was like, oh my god, this is why Danny had to leave the country. He had to flee.
Oh, it had
'cause
already
this-
blown over. It was like like the thing is, he's not like the stupidest guy in the world. He was out of politics at the time when this happened, and he was trying to keep some political goodwill, if you will. He just like was doing this to kind of just like get some good, and I mean, whatever, good for him. He became premier of the province somehow. So
Filth City is a fictional big city mayor named Tom Hogg, who is caught on video smoking crack and will do almost anything to keep the video from seeing the light of day. A poster for the movie features the protagonist clutching an assault rifle with a crack pipe sticking out of his mouth. The tagline on the poster reads, "The crime rate is high, so is the mayor." Speaking with CP24 on Wednesday, Ford called the film a disgusting 2-bit movie and said the person behind it is a scumbag. So I mean, that's pretty good. I mean, you did no press is bad press. So that's kind of the thing.
No,
You basically made yourself known there.
he gave us a way bigger profile of it for sure. Like we ended up doing all these screenings of it. And
so, but what happens if you do something that there's like a gag order against or something like that? So here's the thing.
I mean, I can tell you exactly. You want to know exactly?
Oh yeah.
So go open up Twitter. So there's a kid I know. He used to do comedy, but he's like a political commentator. His name's Daniel Boardman.
Daniel Boardman.
Yeah, he's like kind of a friend of mine, but I don't like know him that well. But he came on our podcast back when we lived in Toronto, and he's so go look him up and go look at his pinned. No. Try Daniel Bordman. Right there, yeah, the top one, that one right there. So go play. I don't want to blow up his shit like this, but go play this video, the hostage video.
This one here?
Yep.
References to Walid Solomon, a father, the chairman of a prominent Canadian law firm, and a Muslim. I have made a plethora of wild accusations about Mr. Solomon, his faith, his loyalties, his associations, and his beliefs. All these statements are categorically false, they are defamatory, and I unreservedly apologize for making those statements. I retract all of them. I have already removed all of the statements on my social media platforms and ask anyone else who may have shared my statements to remove them as well. I recognize that my false statements about Mr. Solomon were presented as research facts when they were not, and they caused Mr. Solomon and his family harm. In my broadcast, I stated that I wanted to have my statements tested in a court of law. That has now happened, and the court has made its decision. The court has found I was reckless in relying on rumors, internet gossip, and innuendo, and I did not act responsibly in making my defamatory statements about Mr. Solomon. The court rejected the information I put forward as evidence. I accept that finding. The court has ordered me to pay Mr. Solomon $500,000 in damages for my defamatory statements. Mr. Solomon and I have agreed to settle the damages awarded against me based on the modest charitable donation made by me that is a fraction of the damages awarded. The court has also ordered that I remove all the defamatory statements from the internet and anywhere else that people may view them. The court has also issued an injunction against me making any further statements about Mr. Solomon, and I will, of course, respect that injunction. I accept the Superior Court's ruling and intend to comply with the court order. A copy of the court's decision is available on all my social media platforms.
Dude, this poor kid.
So
That's such a bummer.
Honestly, yes, but so he has like the second biggest defamation settlement against him in Canadian history.
Jeez.
I've
What
never
did he
heard of
do?
this
What,
guy,
so
Danny.
what did he? So I mean, what did he
He
do?
was like an open mic comic for a while in Toronto. So he
Oh fuck!
to like right wing commentary, right? Like
Ooh.
conservative commentary.
Yeah, don't do that in Canada. Come
Right?
on.
And so no. But this is what he did. He really he was fucking. There was this dude who's
And
a
people
lawyer.
wonder why Jordan Peterson was part of the Social Democrats. Come
Right.
on.
So there's a lawyer, some lawyer who was part of some like Muslim group who then I guess has like a English like arm of, and then the English arm has been accused of funding terrorism. So then this kid, that guy who was trying to run some sort of political thing, the lawyer was either running or he was an aide to somebody, and he was like calling this guy a terrorist, like online. He's like, this guy's a terrorist. And the guy told him to stop, and he's like, no. And then because the guy's a lawyer, he sued him, and then he won. And the kid like just kept going, and like so he had this $500,000 settlement against him. His parents, because he made the videos in his parents' basement.
Oh no.
His parents had to pay this guy a bunch of money, but the guy ended up because eventually I guess he made this video. All he had to do was just apologize, make that video, and then the guy's like, okay, you can just make a small charitable donation.
Yeah, right. That makes sense. I mean, this is the problem with this is it makes sense that you shouldn't say words that aren't true. Terrorism is a international political scientific term that means a non-state actor committing violence, right? And violence is, there's ways to define violence. They've got, the ACLU will talk about it, but I don't know if Canada has the same rules. I know you guys have pronoun misgendering can be considered verbal violence. So I can only
Silence
imagine
is violence.
right? I mean, well, the reason I brought it up, though, is a little bit more nefarious. I thought it'd be worth showing this article. Trudeau's government gag order in CIA brainwashing case silences victims, lawyers say. Daughter of survivor of brutal experiments, nervous to speak out after non-disclosure demands. That's right. Jean Steele was a victim of Dr. Ewan Cameron's CIA-funded brainwashing experiments at Montreal's Allen Memorial Institute 40 years after revelation of the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency funded brainwashing experiments on unsuspecting Canadians. The Trudeau government is continuing a pattern of silencing the victims, a lawyer for one of the families says. A recent Department of Justice gag order in an out-of-court settlement was designed to avoid responsibility and avert compensation to more victims and their families, said Alan Stein, who has represented numerous survivors who were once patients at the Allen Memorial Institute in Montreal. Stein told CBC News that successive federal governments have demanded confidentiality agreements in at least 5 of the cases he has settled in the last few decades. If they hadn't been confidential and the settlements had been public, had the publicity that they should have, a lot of victims would have come forward and gone to court. So, I mean, this is a thing, like what happens when you go and you make a movie telling people about what they, your aunt or mom or grandma or whomever went to this clinic and was, given LSD and electroshock for 30 days or whatever. I mean, because this is going on to apparently, it looks like tens of thousands of people, which is a lot in a country the size of Canada, which is still I mean, it's small now, but in the 60s, it was what, half the size? Is that right?
Probably, yeah.
For take, I think, yeah.
So what do you guys think about that?
I mean, there's shit coming out all the time, but they seem to nip it in the bud pretty quick. And I find that a lot of Canadians are interested in U.S. politics and U.S. scandals and
Right.
U.S. garbage. So I feel like Canada seems to be able to get away with a lot of shit that sometimes even surprises me that I've never even heard of. But I mean, then there's there is the well-known stuff, but even that, I mean, I was just having this thought the other day. It feels like a lot of Canadian stuff just gets swept under the rug, and almost Canada as a concept seems to get swept under the rug. Like if you see in Hollywood, all other countries kind of get a shout out in a certain way, whether it's negative or positive, but Canada is either like not mentioned or like it's just kind of a little jab and it's like, oh, they don't matter, whatever. But
it's kind of crazy. Well, going off of your point, like with the trucker protests, those were like,
sure.
Yeah. I think those proved to be like, it could not have made media as big as it did unless it was a big fucking deal and there were so many participants. It was one of those grassroots things where like it literally became too big to ignore, and then like all the headlines had to be on them, or else everybody would have known something was up.
Totally agree.
That shit was wild though. I don't know, as far as the aftermath, I don't know how much people feel as if, though as big as they were, how much they led to real changes.
Well, I was just going to say, it fizzled off pretty fucking quick too.
Yeah, a lot of stuff seemed to change shortly after, though, but I don't know.
Yeah, well, elaborate. What do you mean? What do you mean? What kind of stuff started to change? What do you think?
Like all the stuff that they were protesting against, like a lot of like the border openings and like rules of, like masks and all that stuff. Like
doing shit
after like coming into Canada from the US, like you don't even need to take a test anymore or anything. I think you don't need to show
where you're going.
No, I don't even know if actually, you know, if you're not vaccinated coming into Canada, you might have to like maybe take a test then. But before, you would need like, you know, a test within, I don't know, 24 hours or something. It was ridiculous.
Right. I remember like, so the border here, they just want to know where you're going. Cause they're like, if you go there, you have to quarantine for at least 5 days. Do you have a destination? Are you going to stay there for like 3 to 5 days or whatever the number is? So, I mean, things are getting more lax. So it is interesting that a lot of the, you know, the demands were met, but then also anybody who's talking about it, if silenced on another level, they're saying nobody's allowed to talk about these things. Nobody should be protesting this way in Canada. Is that right? Or do you think that that's an overstep on my perspective?
I don't think the government should be telling people how to protest, because once the government gets to decide that, then protests don't mean anything. They don't matter because you're just following the rules.
Following their rules.
Like, it's like protesting while following the rules is sort of ridiculous, you know. But yeah.
You know, you were saying they didn't really talk about Canada enough. I see Canada as sort of the Degrassi. You know, it's a forum for students with parents from every other country to come together. And they put the LGBTQ club and the Iranian and Palestinian club in the same room and see if they can use Canadianize or something. But I mean, did they teach you guys about? You said they taught you about America in school. Did they teach you about? What did they teach you about the 1800s of Canada? Did they teach you much about that in school?
History sucked for me in Canada.
Yeah, I mean, they teach you about some for definitely how Canada came to be, and they're, you know,
the fur trade.
Yeah, the fur trade, exactly. That's what they teach you.
That's all I know. The fur trade, man. That's all I know. Hudson Bay and the fur trade. That's all I was taught.
Wow. So not like the names of the like principal the province generals or whatever the names of the, you know, former.
No, nothing. Not really. And like not the treaties. The treaties are just becoming more matterable, so to speak, or more pertinent. And I think I don't know what the curriculum's like these days, but I would assume maybe the treaties are in there somewhere now. But it was pretty awful. Like trying to think of.
I learned more about I learned more about Egyptian history than I did Canadian history.
I was just gonna say, yeah, like I feel like I learned more, about Egyptians or a lot more.
I mean, I
obscure
don't remember anything about Canadian history. Like, I don't remember, not anything, but not much.
Jacques Champlain, I think. I remember
Dude.
that.
What's that? What do you remember?
Close, Jean Champlain.
Jean Champlain. There we go. He had a fucking fort. He had a fort, I think. I remember the picture of it.
I'm sure there's a G. No,
Jean
I got it right.
Jacques de Champlain. Okay.
I'm stoked I got that right because I was gonna do it with
Jacques de Champlain. Okay.
Yeah.
de Champlain.
No,
All
that's
right,
not. That's not him. This person died in the.
2009
Oh yeah,
Lynch
this
study.
guy. Yeah.
Oh.
Not the right guy, I think.
Okay, I thought there were gonna be a G anyway. He's a G in there. Or what
Well,
do you think?
Jacques matters too, but that's another show. That's fine.
That'd be a cool. That'd be a cool T-shirt. Jacques matters too. But
For sure.
1800s. What am I looking for? What did I do? Jacques.
We have like Jacques Cartier, Samuel de Champlain,
Yeah.
Count
Oh,
de
maybe I'm
Frontenac.
thinking of Samuel de Champlain.
Yeah, that's probably it. Yeah.
Do Samuel, yeah.
All right.
Sir Wilfrid
15.
Laurier.
Yeah,
Whoa.
fucking Laurier.
Novo
There you go.
France. So, like, what's the deal with this guy? What do you do? He's a beaver trader.
Frankly,
I think he had a fort. He set up a fort. I think he was. Yeah, I think he was involved in the fur trade. I could be completely wrong.
There
but
is something about trading beavers and trading Indian girls, Native American women. I remember hearing.
that sounds about right. Yep.
And that was like where that term comes from, supposedly. Fun fact.
Indian giver.
No, beaver. This guy's face.
Yeah, he founded Quebec City. It says here.
Oh, yeah. All right. So that's an interesting thing. Let's look at Quebec for a quick second. Again, you guys remember I showed you that map with the LiDAR and stuff, but what do you think about Quebec? Like the idea of this French society, and this is also on Vince, your French education, you said you learned more about Egyptian stuff. Did you learn much about French stuff? Like how much did they focus on that? Or is it about Quebec at all? Nothing. I didn't push that.
It's pretty bare bone. I think that as part of the way that they manipulate how we perceive Quebec or Canada, they sort of filter the amount of information that we'll get. So you'll get more history of Canada talking to a Native American than you would consulting a history book in the education system, because the actual content that you'll get in classes is sort of presenting Quebec as something positive.
Well, I mean, it's amazing. It's kind of like New York. You've got these crazy buildings with, the checkered shields and things that aren't really very French. Checkered shields are more of a Slavic symbol. Certain kinds of gargoyles, which are more Visigothic, Scythian symbols, all sorts of architecture that's, it has more to do with the Cordoba Caliphate in Spain and the Arabs and stuff, but also the Russians, because the Slavs and the Russians were interacting across the Cordoba Caliphate. So I find that interesting. I mean, France has some of this stuff, but you have to imagine how specific Quebec is and Montreal is. I don't know. Do you think it's just all the way? I mean, is there a reason that they're not telling you about your past and they're saying, hey, everybody, start to absorb a new culture? What do they want you to believe about Canada, and what do they want Canada to be?
Well, I think they want us to fight each other forever, because this has been all my entire life. It's just been French Quebecers going, we want to separate, and then English people going, well, like, no, and then it creates conflict, and this is just perpetual, and most of the Quebecers I know, they view themselves as they have a sort of savior idea of themselves, like in terms of, oh, we're not the colonizers, we were just brought here like everyone else, and they feel like they sympathize with the Native Americans, and that their combat versus the English is actually them fighting with the Native Americans against the English. But for the most part, I mean, a lot of French Quebecers are just racist towards anyone who isn't French Quebecer, and that's just really how it manifests, So I feel like the history is sort of secondary, because it's easier to have ignorant people who are just going to argue over things that they don't fully understand. Like, it's just, hey, have a nice national pride, and it's like, okay, but why? And it's like, because those guys are bad over there, and that's the only real pride that we have, that we're better than the English, but we're not, because we make shit everything basically. Our art is not the greatest, our culture is derivative. And
they did say at one point that Canada could have French food, American technology, and British culture, something like that, and instead it ended up with like British food, French technology, and American culture, which is like kind of a bummer for some people. But you guys didn't feel like your schools taught you as much. I've been amazed by Canadian television my whole life. I got a lot of video cassettes, and things when I was a kid from the Canadians, and things like Rock and Rule really shaped me. This movie from Canada with like Earth, Wind and Fire, Cheap Trick, Lou Reed, Iggy Pop, all these crazy bands, Blondie, and it's all about like wiring a woman to a circuit board in order to open a demon that you have to feed the audience to in Toronto or something like that.
I don't remember that one. Holy shit.
This is like the greatest.
Ever watch Frightenstein?
No, let me look this up.
Never seen. Oh man, Frightenstein is the
Frighten. Come on, Frightenstein. There we go.
This is a very Canadian show. This
Jesus
haunted my childhood.
Holy fuck!
Walk me in. What is this? Yeah,
it's this one dude, and he played like almost every character. Dude, the show was on when I was a kid, like late at night. 6 years old. It's such a.
You get a lot of those fucking people. Mike Myers.
A lovely day begins for ghosts and ghouls with greenish skin.
What?
Close your eyes and you.
Surprised you've never seen them, bro.
Fucking Vincent Price over here.
This is Vincent Price.
Seriously.
This is real. What the heck? So what is this? Is this like what? So a kid.
It's everything.
So weird. The show's so fucking weird.
No, again, it does not work.
Oh my god!
Like it
so
is. I
like
think it
the
was supposed to be a
Munsters?
kids show. I think it was supposed to be a kids show, but it was on so late at night. Maybe it wasn't. No, because there was like a hot Elvira chick. I might be.
Well, I feel like that's the thing that happened with Rock and Rule was they were trying to make a kids show, but no one stopped them from going further. You know what I mean? And so maybe eventually that show just
turned into heavy metal.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't know, but
I think heavy metal is French, anyways.
This stuff.
Métal hurlant, it's Mobius.
Wait,
Jean
really?
Jean Giraud.
Oh oui, mon frère.
Fuck.
You can write Jean Giraud.
Can I? I don't even know how to spell that. Just with a G or a J or what?
Hold on a second. I'll write it. Okay, so Jeangiraud. It's called Métal hurlant in French.
Jean Gameshi. Fuck, we can talk.
Jean Girard.
Jean Giraud, yeah.
Can you imagine
one
how
of the greatest
Google
French artists.
Google figured out, or DuckDuckGo figured out what I was trying to say?
Yeah, if you write just a heavy metal behind his name, you're gonna see some examples of it.
What? So he did heavy metal. That's interesting. So in the old comic days too.
Yeah. Like he pioneered I guess modern comic books, really. This guy's.
That's crazy. So yeah, I mean, like the Canadian animation scene is insane.
Baby.
Dude.
I mean, see heavy metal at the bottom. He has like a monkey picture there.
There's a thing. There's a story with Disney. Like originally, Disney made this war bonds video. We can bring this up now. The Winnipeg invasion. So the Winnipeg invasion. Let's see, Nazi invasion.
Oh shit.
So in 1942, the day after my birthday, they staged a fake Nazi invasion, quote unquote, in Winnipeg. And they brought Nazi tanks and dudes dressed in Nazi equipment, and they had like their hiling with their arms and stuff, and they rode down the streets of Winnipeg. If Day was designed to give North Americans a taste of what German aggression in Europe might feel like and raise money through the sale of war bonds, dressed in Nazi uniforms borrowed from Hollywood, men entered Winnipeg, Manitoba on a frigid February 19th with the goal of taking over and administering the city. Fake Nazi occupation were held in several communities in North America, but nowhere was the exercise taken more seriously than in Winnipeg. Planners wanted the fake attack to be as realistic as possible. Royal Canadian Air Force planes with Luftwaffe. Oh, Ryan's back. Cool. Are you jumping in, Ryan? If you hear this, we're talking about the time in Winnipeg that the Nazi invasion of Winnipeg happened. I don't know if you're familiar with this story, but basically they staged this. There was a bunch of them. There's a few that happened if days across North America. Some of them happen in the United States as well. This was the most impressive if day that ever took place, where they literally took over the city of Winnipeg for the day. The attack of Winnipeg begins 6 a.m. February 19th, 1942. An air raid siren begins to wail over Winnipeg on the outskirts of the city. So you imagine you're in your apartment and all of a sudden you start hearing the explosions and rifle fires. This is a play. Very quickly, Wehrmacht soldiers in battle dress and riding vehicles rode into the city center. This reached City Hall at 9:30 a.m. and arrested the mayor and other officials. Then it was on the provincial legislature where they captured the premier and the lieutenant governor. By noon, the invading force had complete control of the city, and jackbooted soldiers goose-stepping down Portage Avenue, Winnipeg's main thoroughfare. I mean, they said they got these...
Winnipeg sends her victory loan rocketing with a brilliant idea. It's Manitoba's dramatic If Day. What to expect if Canada and the United Nations were to come under the grinding heel of Nazism. Mock German troops invade Winnipeg, hauling people off buses and trams and placing the entire city under martial law. The town hall is ransacked, and the mayor arrested as the Union Jack is hauled down and replaced by the swastika.
This is Winnipeg.
For a whole day, the capital feels what it's like to exist under the Nazi yoke. The Winnipeg...
I don't know what you guys think. So
that was like the original, like kind of, that's like one of those like brand activations outside that you see. You know, that's like they're trying to sell something. That's
elaborate
marketing exercise right there.
That's a great market. That's this man in High Castle.
That's literally what it is. They're trying to sell war bonds.
I mean, yeah, I mean,
that's wild, man. That's interesting as shit.
The Occam's razor of that. But so what they did then was they got Disney to build an animation studio using their equipment. The British government did, and it was a, you know, they have like 5 layers of glass that you put the visuals on, and you can move it around. So they brought that to Canada, and they made this animation. Let me see if I can find it. The animation, the Snow White war bonds. Let me see. Snow White war bonds video.
Bringing race into it now.
So this was like 7 Wise Dwarves, and so it's joint produced with what became, you know, the National Film Board of Canada, what became Nelvana. And so they literally have a certain, where is it? Yeah. The dwarves come and they pick up war saving certificates so they can support the crown in its fight to save Canada. You know, eventually that's what's going to happen there. And they can also do other things, but along the way. So, but this company became Nelvana. Nelvana went on to make The Devil and Daniel Mouse. And then they made Rock and Roll. And Rock and Roll is the one with this, you know, occultic rocker who's going to wire a woman to a circuit board in order to bring up the demons, which he's going to feed his audience to. And that movie bankrupted Nelvana because the Canadian government didn't like it. And so after that, they had to make Care Bears in order to make their money back. But that's Canada in a nutshell, I feel like,
get
right?
Tintin on there.
I mean, right? I don't know. So
they did produce some Tintin stuff, actually, Nelvana. So
yeah, it's true. Tintin's cool though. I like Tintin. I also like Lupin the Third, very French. But this movie is the one. So wait, did any of you see Rock and Roll?
No, I still have to though. I
remember the lips.
I remember the nose. I remember the nose distinctly.
Oh yeah, because they're Disney freak mutants, right? This is what happens when Canadians start like learning from Disney, and then they tangent.
Yeah, they look like Goofy's kids,
right?
And Heavy Metal was big. Remember Heavy Metal?
Well, wait, before we go to Heavy Metal, because that's important.
Well, I don't want to go to it. I just mean that like a lot of those actors were the same guys that were from SCTV doing a lot of Canadian stuff. So it was just Canada had this weird animation kick of like R-rated Frank Frazetta type stuff back then.
Let's jump to Heavy Metal. We just were doing Jean Girard, and we'll talk about Heavy Metal in a second. But I just want, because you said you remember as a kid, you saw this kind of. What do you remember?
Yeah.
How old were you? How did that happen? How did you end up seeing this freaked out movie?
I was like 5, and my parents had a satellite dish. I don't know what to tell you. I just remember it because you see this, and it reminded me of like when I watched it, like the Gelflings from Dark Crystal, which I for some reason loved to be terrorized as a child, and that one freaked me out.
Great.
Yeah, and then Heavy Metal came out in I think it was 83, and that was awesome. That's the first time I saw you had animated boobs.
82, right?
Something like that. Yeah, like
81?
all this stuff started coming out then, and as a kid, it was the coolest thing ever because you just turn on Super Channel. Funny enough.
I'm gonna put moderate safe search on because when you look at Heavy Metal, stuff happens, but a lot of boobs.
Yeah.
But the Lorac, man, right? Is that what it's called? The Lorac?
Is it Lorax? Something like that. Yeah.
The Lorax.
But then like John Candy was doing the voices for this. Like all these Canadian actors, the same ones you think of, like the Schitt's Creek guys, were all doing. You probably recognize a lot of them from SCTV, like John Candy, Eugene Levy. I think even Joe Flaherty was in there. I can't remember who Martin Short was.
I have that video. I was showing them the Canadian Conspiracy. Did you see that earlier? This is like...
Yeah. I had this on when I was driving back and forth from the airport.
The American News Network has asked me to introduce tonight's special edition.
The Canadian conspiracy. Well, have you heard of the Brunswick affair? The Brunswick affair. You know what this one?
I have not.
Okay, so the Brunswick affair is crazy. This is all about the idea that Canadian mind control was put into television back in the 60s. And there's actually a specific device that was developed by the British Tavistock Mind Control Association in conjunction with Japanese Victor Company, which meant it was also used in Japanese television.
So Canadian paperclip was like taking the Japanese?
Oh, yeah. Well, the Japanese working with the British after World War II.
November 27th, 1964. Dr. Kwong begins his own analysis of the Brunswick. Where his colleagues had failed, he succeeds. To his considerable satisfaction, Dr. Kwong discovers this miniature marvel, one of the greatest achievements in the field of cybernetics. It is a masterpiece of electronic design.
Very Canadian.
Very Canadian.
Honestly, this looks like Fantastic Planet.
Schoolhouse Rock or something.
Get
Now,
your
how do we
hands
know how
off
that
me, you
works?
dirty apes.
As we've come to call it, exerts a powerful effect on the moderating region of the brain's occipital lobe. It acts directly on this sector right here. Now let's see what happens when a normal human being watches a television set equipped with a manipulode. Here we can follow the path of electromagnetic waves carrying a neutral manipulatic charge. Each second, the viewer is exposed to several hundred of these waves. The individual's consumer's control center tends to exaggerate his needs. But because the manipulatic charge is neutral, the brain's moderating region is able to suppress up to 90% of his desires. Now see what happens when the manipulode emits waves carrying
This is like watching the bat flu science right now, I swear to God.
Canadian television is rough, I'll admit.
Each second.
No, I just
This
mean watching
wave
their
is
science.
made up of millions of microscopic particles called Kwong particles. The instant they come into contact with his occipital lobe, they will cause a normal individual to display bizarre and irrational behavior.
That particular day, I had an urge to buy watches, although I already had a watch.
Oh, shit.
I went out and I bought 15 watches.
So that's the so the idea is they figure out how to start using this stuff for commercialism, but then the British mind control is like, we could use this to better humanity. We could use Canadian television to get people not just to buy ketchup, but actually to buy into diversity, into tolerance, into sophist dialogue, all of these ideas that, you know, Anglo and Francophones in Canada and across the Eurocommons wanted to see happen. An America that wasn't about sparring, but about
Well, that does explain Canadian political Twitter. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but their occipital loads have been hit by the brainwave, what, the Yang particles or whatever.
The Kwong particles in the.
I feel like it's racist to even bring those up. You know?
No, you're Canadian. It's not cultural appropriation. You're allowed, I think.
I got just enough melanin that I can do like a soft. Yeah, no.
Andreas, I gotta run, dude.
Danny's got a show he's got to go to. Guys, check out Danny's channel. I'm gonna put up your link to your thing. Danny, thank you so much for being here, man.
See you again, Danny. Later, bro.
Danny, how do you get a Canadian to apologize?
How?
You step on his foot. Like, oh, sorry, you're walking there.
But
I like the one where it's like, hey, Canadians, have you seen Titanic? And I'm like, what's that, a boat? And he's like, yeah, exactly. It's that one, you know. All right,
that's a boat.
A big one at a
He's
sec.
like, he's a comedian, so he's like, I don't know.
He's like, that's fucking shit, bro.
But he's too polite because he's Canadian. Oh,
I gotta go, man. Oh, shit.
all right. Well, but we're hitting like kind of a point. I just wanted to like kind of like get your feelings on Canadian mind control. Do you think that this idea, I mean, clearly Canada has a culture. It's state sanctioned to produce prescribed culture and to put it out there. That is propaganda, right? So how far do we take this metaphor? How far do you think it is that Canada's trying to, you know, like IKEA, like input into the minds of everybody by programming them?
I think it's like Keystone Cops, man. honestly, they tried a lot of this stuff. I remember reading in my little mind control like rabbit hole, and it turned out all like the MK Ultra stuff just made the Montrealers that they practiced it on like insane.
What are the
they never
Keystone
quite got it
Cops?
to work. Yeah, there they are.
The thing is that even if it did work, they wouldn't actually say that it worked, because then they're admitting that they're using brainwashing. It's more beneficial for the brainwashing to claim that the brainwashing doesn't work, because people don't expect it then. I mean, like, what if they're going to admit it? Like, oh yeah, we were super successful in how we figured out how to brainwash you. I don't think they'd be that successful if they'd be admitting it.
True.
They're
Besides,
making
Marshall
us law.
McLuhan, I think University of Toronto professor put it way better. He found out with the hot and cold mediums, they didn't even have to use this stuff. Like, just by framing the argument in a certain way. And the trucker convoy is a great example of that. Like, I'm talking to people who watch the news, and I talk to people who watch the TikToks of people down there live, and you get a completely different perspective.
Oh yeah.
And so they found, just by like cold media versus hot media. Hot media, I might get them backwards, but hot media is where you just shut off your brain and watch it and you absorb it. Cold media is like you have to engage, you have to think. It's like a back and forth process, like a podcast versus television. And then they found out when it was just more passive that you could frame it in a certain way and create an Overton window of people's thoughts. So you didn't actually have to control their minds. You just controlled all the inputs, which I find scarier, because it like makes sense on an intuitive level, doesn't it?
Yeah, you choose between what you've got options to, but that's what scares me about C11. So you live in Canada, you're a YouTuber. C11 is terrifying to a lot of Canadians. I mean, JJ was saying, a lot of the reasons why. What do you want to do? Do you want to start wearing, a Canadian hockey jersey and drinking maple syrup?
I want to be one of the 10% of Canadians that expatriate once they get big.
Oh my God, really?
This country, 10% of us don't even like. We're fucking out of here.
So, but like, that's serious,
that
man.
Seems like a low number, man. Only 10.
No, but think about what that means. So people are escaping Canada because they're not allowed to do what they want to do.
Well,
that's not what C11
only
should
successful
do.
people. But
well, what the hell?
That's Canadian culture, though. Ever since like the Avro Arrow.
To be honest, American
opportunity everywhere but NASA. Canada.
Americans end up in the Caribbean too. I get what you're saying, but
the great Canadian culture is getting talented and then getting out.
Fucking right.
All right. Well, but I mean, now that we've blackpilled, let's regress a step and just think about C11. Like, how does C11 really, does it scare you at all? I mean, you seem like you don't even care.
No, it scared Canadian TV too, but people worked around it. Like, do you guys know SCTV? Yeah, you know SCTV. They were like Canadian SNL. But I remember hearing, was it Rick Moranis had this thing where CRTC had a huge issue for the same thing that we would get, right? Saying, you need to have more Canadian content. And he's like, let me get this straight. You can have an all Canadian show with all Canadian actors, all Canadian producers, filmed in Canada, and that's not Canadian enough. And they're like, no.
No, you got to drop poutine on people like Nickelodeon did with Slime.
So that's when, as a joke, they're like, let's just make ourselves too. I think the one guy was supposed to be like from Thunder Bay or whatever too. It was somewhere in like Northern Ontario or like somewhere around there.
In the heart of reality.
Yeah. So they made the Great White North, and they just pretended to be their drunken uncles wearing toques and the flannel, drinking from the stubbies.
Oh,
and they would just riff. And they just riffed for 7 minutes, and it ended up being the most popular thing on SCTV, to the point the other cast got pretty resentful over it. So this is what I expect to happen. If they're going to do this with the algorithms, I have a feeling that restriction is going to make certain Canadians way more talented, because restriction.
Right.
And at the same time,
there's art.
Yeah, but there's also going to be a whole bunch of, when there's like the Canadian New Year's Day celebrations, I don't know if you ever watch any of those, like in Ottawa, starring, and you're like, who the fuck are these people? Like, those people are going to have a steady paycheck because of this. I guarantee it.
Oh yeah, dude.
Yeah.
That's what this
whatever
is really about.
Fits the perfect, like whatever you would parade at the Olympics to show Canadian culture off, those people have secured employment.
Yeah, because they don't have to change a thing.
So, no, not a thing at all. So but the rest of us will be
down
fine.
their doors.
So they'll be a bunch more thumbnails that people won't click on because they're like, I don't care about this shit. Let's watch the swearing guys. Yeah,
right.
Let's watch the guy who starts with his buddy where they pretend one of them is woke and one of them is based, and they're the same person. Like that was what got Danny big on YouTube, wasn't it? When he and Ryan did the racist and
yeah.
But it's like, I mean, you were just talking about mind control in Canada and the idea that maybe they're removing some of the input. And so C11 sounds like another way to, control the input of Canadians, saying, hey, now you can't even go to the internet and see your trucker protest conversations with real truckers because we sure as hell aren't going to put that on the front page.
Yeah, that scares me, because honestly, I really am surprised more people didn't watch those TikToks. There was everybody live streaming. You saw everything. I even did a documentary on it. Did you guys know when the convoy first started, CBC tried to run it in? There was a second protest happening the same day. It turns out in Vancouver, where it started, the first protest was because a lot of the big trucking companies are consolidating, and all these individual guys who, the workers that own the means of production, they own their own trucks. They're making a good living. They have good experience. And then they had deregulated the industry to set it up so that they can bring in foreign workers, kind of like the UK does with Poland and that. The problem was these guys weren't given as good safety training. They didn't have a good safety record. It wasn't their truck, so they didn't drive them as safely. Accidents started to go up, which meant insurance premiums across the board went up, which meant they were edging out the individual truckers in favor of these giant mega corporations hiring cheap labor that's unsafe for everybody. So this group was originally there protesting that, and they tried to say this was the trucker convoy because it was only 20 trucks. Problem was, a lot of truckers have had that Canada-wide, and so that's when the convoy started, because these guys were like, okay, this sucks, it's ruining our industry, and then the mandates was like the last straw. And I think at its biggest, it got to be about 120 kilometers long, which if you do the math, depending if they had trucks or not, it was like 1,000 to 5,000 trucks, something like that. So it's like single digit percentage of the Canadian truck industry. So it's not small numbers. And then when you watch all the live streams, they were actually pretty savvy about it, so much that people were calling it AstroTurf. Like when they were there, they had roving gangs of people just to make sure all the trucks had fuel, so guys had heat. They went around to make sure everybody had like they took over the city duties. They were shoveling driveways, they were shoveling the streets, they were taking out the trash. If they found there was a business that wasn't scared of truckers and stayed open, they encouraged everybody to go there to keep them in business. Like they fed the homeless. They had food trucks coming because they were logistics, so they knew how to do this stuff. And then you watched CTV News and that they had a professional photographer bring in their AstroTurf guy. And this is what I mean by mind control. This professional cameraman bought in his buddy wearing a full balaclava with that trucker convoy Confederate flag, which you can tell he was trying to sell that to an American audience, because Canada, what the fuck do we care about the Confederate flag?
Yeah,
like,
it should have been like a fleur-de-lis Confederate flag. That would have been adorable.
See, that would have made more sense. Or the Canadian ensign, the old British one that the Halifax 5.
Or just a dude pouring maple syrup on his chest, which is like a very...
Hey, now that's a Canadian tradition, sir. Yeah. But that was the thing. So the news blasted him everywhere. And then if you watch the live streams, it was like every trucker telling the guy to piss off, right? They were going to basically thump him. The Nazi guy, nobody ever saw him outside of that one photo that was floating around. So I don't think you need a mind control device, because all they did was take two examples of things that were very likely placed there on purpose and then spread that as the thing. And now everybody who only watches the news, that's all they see. Oh, look at all these bad guys. And there wasn't that many truckers. But then again, you watch the live streams, you see thousands of trucks. There was like a 4-hour live stream just watching them drive by.
There was a lot of live streams going on, man. A lot of TikToks and YouTube live streams, Facebooks.
Yeah, it was
the thing
awesome.
Is that, I mean, it's still part of the brainwashing. It's just not using a device. It's just at this point the brainwashing is so integrated into our culture that you can just drop off some keywords and suddenly people will be like, oh, well, that's just a bad thing by default. So they said that the authority said that it's linked to this bad thing, therefore I have
that's
to
how
think
it's
bad.
anchored.
It's like they had someone in Parliament say that honk honk was code for Heil Hitler, you know, and like this is our taxpayer money, and they were saying this, you know, and when you have something that simple, it's going to trigger so many people into just a simple reaction, and that is the basis of MK Ultra, basically. I mean,
it's also public relations. Let's remember the way you put it, Ryan.
Same thing.
It is public. Yeah, exactly. Because propaganda And we remember that propaganda is not a term we like to use in the West because of the Italians. I guess we're racist. So we instead say public relations because Bernays was cool, I guess, you know.
Public relations is the original public relations.
He didn't invent breakfast. He popularized taking like King Louis's midnight snack and making that the American tradition, like giving people hot and cold, hot fudge and, you know, cold ice cream, like syrups on top of pancakes. These are things that the royals who are obsessed with, you know, give me something hot and cold or I shall kill you because they have nothing left to live for. That became the ideology for the American. Right. Yeah. Breakfast being the most important meal of the day. Why? Because it is ideologically, but we have this idea that Canada.
Well, that's the only reason we have 3 meals a day was because we wanted to distance ourselves from the savages on the North American continent.
Right, who actually ate like 6 small like snacks throughout the day. Actually, they have like a nibble of jerky and things like that, and have like a singular meal as a
couple jerks throughout the day.
Yeah, and you have a faster metabolism for that, unless you slow down the. Oh, Jordan, that was very Canadian. Anyway, but Canada is a place where public relations has run rampant for about 150 years because they were worried their culture would be erased if they didn't prescribe, not just diagnose, not just describe what people are doing, but prescribe culture. So they're saying, hey, you know, and you saw, were you here during the Winnipeg Nazi invasion scene?
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
All right, so this idea, so I mean, I think Stefan super chatted to that, like, you know, wouldn't they pretend it's a hoax, right? Like, I think that's the thing, but realistically, it's more important that they presented, hey, this could happen to you. We're running you through the emotional stress of what would happen if this was to happen to you. This is better than American television. This is old Shakespearean real world theater. This is like Orwell's Attack of the Aliens, Attack of the Worlds. Is that what's called? Attack.
Dude, imagine the Nazis come over to North America like, we're going to Winnipeg, boys.
Of all places, yeah. Winnipeg.
I want to be surrounded by nothing. Let's go.
Winnipeg's beautiful. We got some good girls in Winnipeg. I'm sorry, but you know,
name a second town in Manitoba.
I'm not gonna do it. No,
nobody can.
Wait. Indian Head. Sorry.
Wait, really?
Yeah, because I was reading into a little mosque on the prairie, and where it's actually shot, and there's a statue of a giant Indian head right there. So that stuck out in me.
There's no way somebody calls something Indian in Canada. Oh, geez, no, it's in Saskatchewan.
Oh, sorry. Okay, well, all right, wrong province.
Having said that, how has that not changed to First Nation head?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's a weird one. They've left that untouched.
Yeah. I mean, but it's Saskatchewan's cool. I mean, having
that's
a name
the
like
N-bomb
Saskatchewan
for Canada right there. I'm telling you.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, dude. There we go.
Yeah.
There's one for you for the podcast. Yeah.
I find that interesting because like Indian, it doesn't come from the word Indios, meaning God's people. Like, right. So what do you think? Why is it such a bad term?
Oh, they just told us one day that it's an N-bomb. Something about the residential schools.
Right. And so what are you supposed to say instead?
Oh, what is it now? It was Aboriginal, then First Nations.
So Aboriginal's weird because it's original, meaning not original. Okay, so that's already kind of suspect.
Yeah, like slowly shifted over the years. Like,
and then you said
that one's racist now. And I think you guys are right.
Native American's kind of gross because it's got American in it. So you said the native, and then
we're not American.
So now they're First Nation. First Nation's kind of interesting. So they're a nation. So what does that mean? Do they have what kind of rights are we extending? I mean, to the guys who gave you.
I'm not touching this. Anybody want to touch this?
It's a lot.
Money to buy trucks.
I'm not touching this.
I'm gonna hold my Hillary Clinton while you tell me what you guys did for your First Natives. You know, tell me more.
Well, we just let one run rampant in Saskatchewan, murdering a bunch of other natives. That was pretty cool.
So what was the deal with that? Right? Who was that?
Stabbing spree, man.
Oh yeah, it's true.
Cool, babe. That was
recent. That was 10 people got stabbed recently.
I thought it was 15.
Maybe last I read was 10, but they basically they censored any comments on it because for sure people would have been like, oh, if only there was knife control, you know, we wouldn't have this horrible thing.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm laughing at knives. I think knife control is really funny because the next thing is spoons, right? And eventually you're eating celery in your prison.
After that, it's fist control. So they're gonna put weights on all our bodies like Harrison Bergeron or something.
Yeah. 10 Saskatchewan stabbing victims and how their loved ones are remembering them. The 9 people killed at James Smee Cree Nation. Oh, that's terrible. And 1 in Weldon, Saskatchewan were loved in their community and are mourned by the family and friends. Who killed them? Why? Was it some crazy white guy who was upset at natives?
These other 2 First Nations guys, allegedly. I'm trying to word this well. I don't know how to do
Two
it.
that's all right. Two
you're
First
canceled.
Nations. Two First Nation guys walk into a bar and then they open
Yeah,
fire.
they literally went like Tutsu Rwandan here, where they were going door to door stabbing. Apparently, there was already warrants out on them because they had broken parole from before. The cops couldn't be bothered. And then they didn't inform the public about it at first. And they're kind of, I don't know, you're getting conflicting information about this, but it's just like Halifax all over again, where the RCMP, who always gets their man, was like corruptly inept for this whole time. And I don't even know how they ended up, like, apparently they caught him and then he died of like a heart attack afterwards, which
bullshit. Like for all we know, these are classic like MK Ultra brainwashing. Like they just got unleashed, and we don't actually know much else.
Fun fact: I heard that the is it Ojibwa word? I don't know. I'm sure in Canada it's similar because I heard that in Canada that often the word for police in native languages is kidnapper, because often they would just take your kids.
What?
Yeah, because they just take your kids. Like in the 19th century, a lot of the time, just like if you're not doing something the way they want, or they want to they put them in a Catholic school, put them in a foundry, some orphanage, and they can re-raise them as more Canadian people.
The residential schools. Do you really want to go there?
I do. Tell me about the Scots.
That's an episode for sure.
Oh
yeah,
God,
that's an entire episode.
Yeah,
How long did they started
episode.
in like the 1890s? They finished it in the 1970s. Catholics
Dude,
tried to
96, 96 the last
96. Jeez,
all right, this is how excited I am. Every letter came with several letters when I tried to type it. Residential school in Canada. What do I do? Where do I look? Where do I go?
This is a huge.
God.
You'd be better off looking up native killings in
wait.
residential schools.
Before we go
This
here,
is Canada's slavery, essentially.
Basically, they kidnapped a bunch of kids, and then they couldn't take care of all of them properly, and they just ended off burying the dead ones or killing them.
Have you heard of orphan trains?
Yeah.
This is way worse than orphan trains.
So
this is worse than I would say.
The priests were diddling kids. The priests were like letting kids die. They were burying them in the backyard. Like
I'm connecting the idea that this school probably had Canadians from all over Canada and not just from the immediate community. Is that right? Is that the idea? They were brought here from all over?
It was just from all the reservations.
Right.
So specifically this.
So they kidnapped oh my God, this is brutal. Okay.
This is essentially all the disposable people that they could just do whatever they wanted with. So, when you hear about like child trafficking, can you imagine just how much they must have done with this? Just free access without parents' consent necessary. Just we're the government, we can take them. Oh, they disappeared. We don't know what to say. That's it.
Wow. Canadian First Native sterilization.
What's
There's
interesting? What's interesting with the residential stuff is that it's gone full circle and it's become a tool for virtue signaling. So like there's an aspect of white shame that comes into this, where you have a guy like Trudeau who just starts talking about it like oh, he's making something better, and he's doing favors to the Native Americans by talking about the crimes that we've done. This is the peanut butter solution.
Dude, they do. Here's what they do now. It's the weirdest thing. You only see it with like government officials and very woke people, is that before they start whatever they're doing, I was at a TEDx talk here in Toronto. They did this. They tell you what tribe owned the land before you, and you have a moment of silence. This is before you have tea or coffee or anything. It's this weird self-flagellation in public.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I was saying when I said treaties are becoming the thing now about teaching. We're all about them treaties now. Fucking whether it's a business meeting or a fucking seminar or a rock concert.
It's interesting these guys aren't holding their hands like priests in a prayer or anything. They've got their
hand. They're on their best behavior. It's
they're on their hidden hand
their
right
best
there.
Behavior.
Can you imagine how violent they must have been? Like, man.
That doesn't look like a very happy guy. Hidden hand. Let's do the hidden hand. In case anyone forgets.
Picture day. That's why he's so pissed off. He's like, fuck, I can't.
It's usually in the coat there, but there it's tucked under the arm. But.
I mean, hey, dude, David Bowie, it is what it is. But the hidden hand. So, I mean, these priests doing the hidden hand.
On the cover of GQ.
Yeah.
Who are these guys over here? All right. And you got all these people. So there's a lot of training going on. And so
go to the left again. Go back to that photo.
Sure.
Who are those suits, man?
Who are the suits?
The guy in the suits on the left.
Yeah. Look at what's going on there.
Whoa.
Those are the
look at that girl. Look at these kids that are not stoked to be really close to them, leaning away from him, just grabbing him and stuff.
Jesus.
Canadian men in
and the bow tie cocksucker.
Oh, it's brutal.
Oh, I have I have one weird guy to mention. That
Uh-oh.
you know, if you want to talk about brainwashing in Canada, we have a guy called Rael.
The show is called MK Canada, but yeah, what's his name?
We have a guy called Rael here, and he's the head of a cult.
Oh, the Raelians are from
yeah.
No, he's from France. He's
no,
from,
but he got banned from France, and he has a compound in Quebec. So he came to Quebec after being banned from France, and we've had him on talk shows and stuff, and so he's a real pro. It's RAE. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I know this guy. Actually, I talked to him one time. I wanted to do an interview with him. I'm pretty interested. So there's a lot of interesting connections to Rael and to Clonaid. Let me do this real quick. Clonaid Eve. Rael said in 1997, and here's the Fox News article about it, that their successful clone Eve is alive, living in Israel, created from an in vitro care from the Clonaid company, right? So Clonaid is a company that was created by, you're not going to show me pictures, created by, members of the Raelian cult. Let's also remind people what the Raelian cult's symbol is.
That was such a GeoCities website there. That was awesome.
They are super old school.
Yeah, man.
Look at that. Look at that like suspect logo. It's like a swastika and a Star of David.
That's sketchy as fuck.
Yeah, they are very strange people.
They believe alien. Well, it is what it is. It's not that weird. I lived in Santa Monica with a lot of Scientologists.
Yeah,
they're not that different. These are
by California standards, it's not that weird.
These are French Scientologists. But here's the deal: Clonaid. They started a company in the Bahamas. If you look up Clonaid and you type in Epstein, of course, then you'll start to get the connections where the money came from that allowed for further clones after 1997 with Epstein up to 2006, 7 or something like that. So there's a lot of good stuff there. If you're looking into the idea of, are there really clones? Are there Bahama Islands where they're taking native ladies, giving them 15 grand so that they can raise an in vitro clone inside of them? Yes is the answer.
So it's like the equivalent. It's like the Brazilian sons or whatever it's called there, the sons of Hitler in Brazil, except in Canada instead.
Yeah, like the boys in Brazil. Well, it's
boys in Brazil,
but they're Epstein's. There's the
Carmen. A Canadian thing. Take some awesome thing, slap a Canadian logo on it, make it second tier.
I'll take it. I'll take Canada. Anyway, there's also the Netflix show Carmen Sandiego, which is all about this idea of cloned orphans, etc., that are all being raised by super soldiers with genetic modifications.
Triangle, dude. Look at that triangle. What's going on?
That. Boom. She's part of that group right there. A lot of hidden hands in this Netflix show for kids. Illuminati confirmed. Yeah. I don't know. Canada's got a lot of weird stuff going on. That cartoon is animated in Toronto by former members of the Vancouver Art School that work for Nelvana and CBC. And you guys do Babar. You guys do all the crazy shows. Anything that nobody cares about.
We fucked with Babar.
Anything that nobody wants to pay for, the Canadian government pays to make it happen. Right?
Reboot, bro. Reboot.
Reboot.
But who's demanding Babar? It's literally like 6 royal family members are like, my great grandmother, the Queen, read me Babar.
Cartoons for old
guy
people.
Who's ever seen Little House on the Prairie that I've ever met. I'm just saying. Or Little House on Mosque on the Prairie.
Mosque on the Prairie, right? Yeah. I don't know.
I've never met a second person that's watched it ever.
It means a lot about
Canada. You into that or what?
I love it. Ryan. I love all Canadian stuff. Wait, Ryan. Yeah, wait. Have you seen it?
No.
Are you into the Mosque, Ryan?
No, God, I haven't watched any of it.
He's like, fuck no, dude, no.
We don't want to be brainwashed by the CBC. Come on.
I still think Kids in the Hall was like canceled 5 years ago. Actually, I guess that came back now.
Yeah,
Hall's pretty good.
They've made a bit of a comeback, yeah.
Like
everything.
Awesome.
But it feels so Scottish. That's the other thing. You've got like influence of culture that really, Peanut Butter Experiment is very French. Kids in the Hall is very Scottish. What do you think of when you think of what Canadian, or is that not
berry pie? You can go everywhere. What is it, Mr. Dress Up Canadian too?
A reboot.
I know Mr.
Man.
Wizard was, and Reboot.
What's Mr. Dress Up?
It was this guy who had a tickle trunk and he would just dress up with new things and he had stuffed animals. And
dolls. That's horrifying. Okay, so this is basically Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, and then there was Lamb Chop and
Lamb Chop's Canadian?
I think so.
No.
I think so.
Lamb Chops Play Along. That's what it was called.
Lamb Chop Play Along. Dude, is that really?
Oh my God!
Canadian?
Look at that fucking thing.
She's
that's gotta be Canadian.
What's her name? Sherry
Lewis?
It
wasn't you?
What about?
Never mind. You might be right.
Born in the Bronx, New York City. I don't know.
Magic School Bus?
Is Magic School Bus? I don't know. PBS.
The Friendly Giant might have been
the Berenstein Bears.
The place
must have been.
The place we cross over is PBS because PBS represents American propaganda, and American propaganda and Canadian propaganda are like linked.
We got Clone High.
Oh, that's true.
Oh, nice. Clone
okay,
High,
wait.
So
let's
nice.
do it. Let's do a quick
and
deep
Mission
dive into
Hill.
Clone High.
Friendly Giant. There we go.
Wait, Friendly Giant. Oh, we're gonna do Clone High.
Dude, Xirtus, you would love Clone High.
I love Clone High. Way back in the 1980s, secret government employees dug up famous guys and ladies and made amusing genetic copies. Now their clones are sexy teens, and they're going to make it if they try learning, loving, sharing. Now it's time to watch Clone High. Yeah, I did get the Canadian mind control pretty deep. But so this is a Canadian show. What's this? The Friendly Giant?
No, the one up top left. It's
this
guy. He has he lives in a castle and he has a giraffe and a.
I remember this.
And what's the ideology here? What are they trying to teach you?
I don't even know, man.
Yeah, I don't remember it either.
You guys gotta think like
he's got a flute and a recorder at the same time. Oh, what the fuck's he trying to pull here?
If taxpayers are being exploited to make a military mind control program, you should be wondering what are the messages that they wanted you to glean from that. I would think
he's got a cock on his shoulder.
The thing is, it's not just about a message. It's also just about consumption itself. So
it's about a feeling. Yeah,
because like when you have kids, they're glued to a television whether the content is good or not, and so you just have a sort of an aspect of brainwashing that is just about consumerism in of itself without necessarily having some sort of repeated message. Like the repeated message can be no message. It can be empty your mind, just don't think too much and consume this stuff, which is what a lot of Canadian television really feels like. It feels hollow, it feels soulless, and a lot of it is just bizarrely really, really empty in terms of actual message and content.
Man, but Clone High was great. The idea that mind-controlled clones of the U.S. presidents.
Clone High was short-lived for a reason, though.
It's so good, man.
It was too good for Canadian television.
You know what they did? The dudes who made Clone High went on to make the Lego Movie. And so the Lego movie, so let me go. Lego movie, and the Lego movie,
the Lego movie,
yeah, right, kinda though, kinda in its own way. But the deal with the Lego movie is it's connected to the Danish crown and the idea of the law of Jante, right? Law of Jante it seems like a very Canadian law. You might not have heard of it because it's not a Canadian law that you would use, but it's the law of the Scandinavians and the Scandinavian Viking tribes, and it seems like something the Canadians believe. Because in America, you say, hey, you're special, right? And you're a special kid. But the 10 rules of the state for Jante were you're not to think you are anything special. You're not to think that you're as good as us. You're not to think you're smarter than us. You're not to convince yourself that you're better than us. You're not to think that you know more than us. You're not to think that you're more important than us. You're not to think you're good at anything. You're not to laugh at us. You're not to think anyone cares about you. You're not to think that you can teach us anything. Is that not like
Party of Canada?
You just sum it up and be like, "You're shit, dog."
Doesn't that kind of feel like Canada though? Because you guys are all humbled in a way. Like, well, I don't know. I mean, I might be an expert, but I'm humble about it, right? And would they do that to you? What do you think?
Well, we see the Laurentian elite doing stuff like that. Yeah.
Hey, say that again. Laurentian.
Yeah, the Laurentian elite.
Laurentian elite.
I think it's how you spell it.
Tell us more. What does this mean?
It's the Canadian Rockefellers. There's the group of people between Ottawa, Montreal, and Toronto.
Oh, now you bring up the Laurentian. Thanks,
yeah,
Ryan.
dude.
Okay,
we got so many good shit to talk about now that we're fucking.
What is this? Okay, so in Canadian political terms, used to refer to individuals in the upper class of society who live along the St. Lawrence River and watershed in the major cities of Montreal, Ottawa, and Toronto. These are those rich.
These are our blue bloods. Our blue bloods.
Oh man,
like you guys, you know the blue bloods in America, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Rothschilds and all that. Yeah, this is ours.
These are the guys who use Manhattan as their Tijuana. They just jump across the border and come back.
Kinda. Trudeau's a member of it. In fact, most prime ministers tend to be part of it. Harper wasn't, and that's why his election was such a big deal. Polyev, I can't remember if I think he's not part of it either. That's why there's this big campaign against him. But Ignatieff, he was the one trying to run before, and I remember he didn't even live in Canada. He lived in Britain. Even Andrew Scheer, our conservative that was running 2 conservative leaders ago, had dual citizenship to the States, but wasn't going to give it up unless he won.
Oh, that guy's a fucking joke.
Yeah, he's got 5 kids. He's hardcore. I think he's Mormon or something.
Well,
or LDS. I guess Mormon's pejorative. They like LDS.
Good for him.
But yeah, so
Andreas, you should put your face on him.
The ones that tend to do well are the ones that are in that part of that elite squad. I don't think it's something nefarious. It's just people who had a lot of money from the British days are just using that money to get what they want more so.
Is there like a French equivalent, guys?
They're part of it. There's the Laurentian elite has France in there too, or Quebec in there too.
So it is what it is. It's like royals in Canada. This is the Laurentian elite. Okay.
As close as we got.
Wait, but it says term was coined by the journalist Ibsen, Canadian consensus to describe the belief that the general governing political consensus exists in Canada from Confederation until early 20th century with the election of Stephen Harper and the Conservative Party of Canada with the majority of government in 2011 federal election without significant support in Quebec. What's up with that? Why is there not?
Remember that? Well, it's significant because they've essentially been, the Liberal Party was always known as like the government of Canada. Like they were the people that ran things. And the idea is they ran unopposed for like 100 years. And Canada's only, 120 years old? And this, Albertan cowboy type economist managed to get through. And it was like the strangest thing. It's kind of like when Trump, remember when he beat out the Bushes and the Clintons and he just destroyed both those empires? Like that's kind of how big a deal it was.
Wow. So this was a major move to kind of step away from the Laurentian elite. Do you think that there's been success or what?
Well, on our third Trudeau term, I would say yes, it's been an astounding success. Has it been a success?
Motherfucker.
Poor Canada. Oh my God.
You see those 10% of Canadians coming back to our booming, media industry? No. Even this, this was all the Laurentian elite's idea, the residential schools. They've somehow managed to whitewash it as being their fault. And it's even now. And now that they're using it to their own ends, like there's a Kamloops residential school that somebody had done some new type of ground wave thing. Said, I think I found another 125 graves, some crazy number like that. But here's the problem. Nobody ever dug down to confirm it, but they just ran with it. And they somehow made it all about the Liberals are trying to get to the bottom of this thing. And it all ended up being nothing. It's been a few years later. Even the residential tribe in the area that's in charge of their reconciliation thing have said it's nothing. Everybody who's there, we know who's there. This is most likely rubble and stuff like that.
Check this out.
Everyone's
got their hands open, right? Except for the same guy from the last picture who's got his hand crossed.
Yeah, dude.
Again.
And look at Winston Churchill on the left there with his wife.
Oh my God. That must have been a fun trip.
That's fucked up.
I mean, so it's weird because you look at the orphan trains, they're bringing kids all over the world. They're bringing kids from Canada to Russia. They're bringing Russian kids to Canada. They're mixing your populations and everything. I mean, this seems like the point when there's this major confluence. Why are the Laurentian elite what are they trying to do to Canada?
I think they just want to run shit. I don't think they have noble goals other than that. The whole point of this was because they took an entire generation of kids, they had crippled any native culture. Mm-hmm. So when these kids got back, they didn't know what the Iroquois culture was at all. And so now when they get back, there's very few people that are older than this to learn from. And so they've just been decimated. And that's why you have a lot of these problems. It's all of a sudden one day I take you out of America, take everybody your age and younger out of America for 100 years. And then you guys have to go back in America and reintegrate. It'd be hard. You wouldn't know anything about American culture, right?
So it's kind of it's a Maoist cultural revolution.
Totally was. So yeah, Canada. And here's the thing. It's it's in the past now, recent past. We've made amends to it. It's like South Africa. But the Canadian culture, we got to own this too. But we kind of try to shy away from it. Mostly what the government does is just throw money at people so they be quiet. They don't actually try to fix problems. Right now, a lot of tribes don't have running water. It's crazy that we both did these horrendous things and then would rather look like we're solving them, but not solving them. And this is where I think the Laurentian elite is just really an out of touch group. They just want to feel good about themselves. They want to consolidate the power they have, and they don't really care who it hurts as long as they look good at the dinner party. I think that's the best. Am I accurate? Am I going off the radar here, guys?
I think you got the right temperature, man.
Oh, there he is.
Sailor fuck.
Man of the people.
Gay.
So I mean, yeah, and so obviously I can't ever do an episode without talking about it. But Trudeau and Castro, let's just do it. What do you guys think? I mean,
yeah, do it, man. I think it's very plausible. The mom was shagging everyone from Mick Jagger to Fidel Castro. So,
I mean,
I
that's
don't
an
want to make
interesting
him
thing.
that cool because people thought Castro was cool. Nobody thought Trudeau. Well, I guess, yeah, I'd rather he not.
Pierre, people like Pierre. There's that group that like Pierre.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people thought Castro was like a friend,
Communists.
the enemy of my enemy kind of a thing. Like, well, that guy's kind of like
I
fighting
just don't want
against-
some edgy, woke high school kid and college kid wearing a Trudeau shirt like a Che Guevara thing. I don't want to.
Oh,
give
that'll
him that.
never happen. No.
I
Oh,
want
bro.
I want to make one except he has blackface on.
Oh, dude,
Yes.
I was at the hospital like a couple of weeks back, and some guy had this Trudeau shirt, and I looked over, I'm like, fucking Toronto. And I was about to I'm like, do I make a scene? Is this Twitter or is this real life? And then I look over, and he had half Castro, half Trudeau, and it had
Nice.
Trudeau on the top. I just
Fuck
tapped
yeah.
on the shoulder. I'm like, dude, greatest shirt. And then he's like, thanks, man. Looks over to his girlfriend. He's like, I get that like every day.
Might have been my
He's like,
dad.
see, honey, it's cool.
Yeah. Oh, it makes me laugh.
My God. Well, I mean, we're kind of hitting kind of like a point at near the end there. Do you guys want to start? Is there anything you want to share before I share your, links and where they can find more of your content? I know, Jordan, you had something you were going to share about Canada at some
The
point.
Canadians are too shy.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, I think my topic probably best to save it for next time because there's so much shit that we can get into. So I think I'm gonna be an asshole and just pocket it for now.
Dang. Aw,
Because
man,
then
well,
you have to invite me back. That's
yeah,
I'm
well,
pulling that shit.
I'm gonna invite you back. You should still do it anyway. What was the thing? It was about World War
Camp
II.
X.
Camp X.
Are any of you guys familiar with Camp X?
Yes.
Let's do a
Yeah.
camp. Let's just jump into
Yeah,
it. We can, if
man.
you guys are okay, we'll go like a little.
Sure, let's do it.
Yeah, let's go.
I
through
can go
Camp
as
X.
long as you want. So
I mean,
I just thought you were on a time limit.
I just want to do. I'm curious about this. This is really crazy. So in Ontario, Canada, Camp X was the unofficial name of the Secret Special Training School numbers 103, Second World War British paramilitary installation for training covert agents in the method of required for success in clandestine operations. There's a movie about this called The Experts with John Travolta, kind of kidding here, but where they take Canadians out of Toronto and they bring them to the KGB's Soviet island where they're trained how to make a fake America town that they have to update because it hasn't been updated since the 1950s. But what do you guys think about? Oh yeah, this is that movie. Very good movie. I think it's probably the best John Travolta movie ever, and it has that guy who's also Canadian, but I forget his name. You know what I mean?
Oh, that guy. Jeez.
That guy,
from
right?
Mannequin.
Right? Oh, is he? Is he a
don't know.
mannequin? I don't think.
Is
so.
anybody gonna know?
I watched Mannequin. I watched Mannequin 1, 2, and 3. Well, and the prequel because I call Mannequin 1, Mannequin 2 because there's Mannequin 0, which is another. Anyway,
Is that today's special?
We'll do it another time. Camp X though. Camp X. What is Camp X? Tell me about this really quickly. What is this?
The training camp, man. They trained secret agents there. It was just outside Toronto, essentially, which is now known as the city of Pickering. And aside from the really cool, interesting stuff of it being the secret agent training grounds where U.S. soldiers and British soldiers were trained to do these really, really high class and very significant missions throughout World War II. There's also some interesting characters that pop up around there, including Ian Fleming. And essentially that's where he got a lot of his main cookie cutter concepts for the James Bond series, such as every movie kind of has the Q scene where he gets the new car, the new gadgets, all that shit. Well, that was I think Station Q it was called, which is, anyone who's familiar with Toronto, that is now known as Casa Loma. And my friend, Lynn Philip Hodgson, who he's got a few books on the topic, I suggest you checking out Inside Camp X. He just opened up a museum at Casa Loma about Camp X. But another interesting little tidbit is the screenplay writer for Goldfinger, which was, I think, one of the, third, give or take, one of the first Bond movies. It turned out to be the most successful screenplay, and a lot of the concepts that aren't recycled in the Bond movies are found in Goldfinger alone, such as if you remember in Goldfinger, he's got this really obscure training facility where he's training all these women and intricate soldiers with all these, you know, unknown fighting tactics and different gadgets. Well, that's what Camp X was. So yeah, it's an awesome topic, man.
Wow. So basically, like, you think about the mind control and all the technology, and people don't think about Canada's spying, but of course, Canadians that could speak with a British accent, a French accent, and an American accent would be very well placed, and you could find someone who could do that in Canada. And of course, even if you couldn't do the French accent, because you could only do the French accent, you could have multiple spies. But the amount of technology that they had in Canada too, I mean, this is insane.
Yeah, no, it's cool. There's a lot of stuff there. There's a lot of stuff. If you don't even have to dig too deep, and there's a lot of interesting stories there. And
what do you guys have you guys heard of? I was going to ask, have you other Canadians heard of Camp X? Is this something you guys have heard of before?
Not till I joined the military. No.
Well, okay, wait, what?
This should be in history. This should be in Canadian history, man.
So when you joined the military, what did they tell you? What?
Well, it's mostly just boilerplate stuff. Like, you kind of find out about the history. A lot of guys started becoming gun collectors, and then you hear about our special forces, and this carries on over to JTF2 and that. Yeah, it's just little things like that.
What's JTF2?
JTF2 is our special forces, Joint Task Force 2.
Oh, wow.
They do everything. And they weren't even known. We were actually good because nobody knew what our special forces was called till like 1998 or something like that either.
Well,
like,
what's the failure rate? That's how you know they're good. The failure,
the failure rate of guys washing out.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, I just know that's high. They only have
Buddy,
like
100%, 100% washout rate. That's how fucking good we are.
But there was
one who signed up, but he lasted a day. He said a day.
But there were some interesting things. The JTF2 had taken prisoners. There's some some humanitarian crises, right? That were before Guantanamo Bay, with the Royal Air Force and with the JTF2. Is that right?
No, you're thinking the paratroopers in Rwanda, the ones where they were torturing kids, or?
Well, let's pull that up. I mean,
there's Castle Loma right there.
Let's see here. Paratroopers Rwanda. That's not how you spell Rwanda, is it? Okay, Canada.
I think it was Rwanda. Anyways, we don't have paratroopers anymore. They disbanded their regiment because of that.
Okay, because they were torturing kids or something.
Yeah, we had to do like a big apology for it in the 2000s.
Yeah, I remember the idea that there were Canadians that were
but all of our special forces stuff came out of like Camp X, like that kind of where it all got its start from.
And so like Camp X is not just a training facility, it's also where Q facility is for
just close it down. They thought this is great, let's expand it elsewhere, and that's where all these other things came from.
Yeah, so in Castle Loma is in Toronto, so it's a little ways away from Camp X, but yeah.
How close is Eureka to Camp X? You know what I mean? Like, is there like a group of Canadians on like some satellite town that are being raised?
What the fuck is this?
You never seen Eureka?
No.
Oh my God. It's a show about a Canadian town that's got like Silicon Valley. It's basically Silicon Forest gulag. It's an obelisk or something in Chernobyl, but it's in Canada. And they have a secret town where everybody's like a rocket scientist for Camp X.
Oh.
I understood about a third of those words.
Camp X. Though. Secret town next to Camp X.
Secret town, Camp X, Eureka.
Yeah, and it's a show. It's like a show all about a guy who comes to that town because he's not really good at tech, but he's good at like keeping the town running or something like that. He's like the sheriff or something for all this weird stuff that goes on. And
like Rick from The Walking Dead, I guess.
I was gonna say that is so Canadian. I don't understand your tech stuff, but I'm just really good with the wrench.
I'll run the town.
It was like if you crossed X-Files with Psych, I guess. I don't know, but it wasn't bad. I don't know. So Camp X is a place that you think is still pretty important, pretty prominent. You think so?
It was. Absolutely, I think they close it down after a while.
It's closed down, but I mean, it's still super important, I think, to teach in history, and I think for Canada to get its paid due on that, because
is Canada doing like mind control experiments with new bases somewhere, you think?
Probably not. Our military is kind of a mess right now.
Yeah.
A lot of careerists. We haven't had a war, and the problem is careerists take over when we're at peacetime.
Like now, going through women's panties too, so that kind of set us back a bit. So I don't know.
Oh, the serial killer one. I thought
Williams
you meant,
or whatever. Yeah,
he was pretty bad. Well, and then we lost one of our really good admirals when they found out he mooned somebody in Royal Military College in '95. So
you can't do that.
That's the problem. Is they're like purging all the confidence out.
He should have done blackface.
Yeah,
you would have been fine.
Yeah, he could have became prime minister.
Yeah.
Hey, I take that as a thing of hope. Everybody's worried about cancel culture, but you could do blackface more times than you can count, and you can still run the country.
Yeah, if you're the bastard son of a royal part of the Franco occult elite or whatever from the House of Normandy and the Saxon Coburg von Goth, etc. I don't know.
That's right, man. That's all you need.
Well, guys, I think we had a pretty good. That was a good closer. Jordan, why don't you tell us? You just did a September 11th thing, which I was remiss to miss myself. I was supposed to be part of this thing, but I screwed that up. But it's an amazing special. I think you had William Ramsey was there, right?
Yeah, we had a whole fuck ton of people. So we did the 1 year anniversary of Divulgence, and we did the 21 years of 9/11. But we got into like a lot of interesting stuff, about like kind of spirituality and a lot of deeper stuff. But I'm literally posting tonight episode 30, where I interviewed John Phillips, who is the attorney for Joe Exotic, Tiger King.
Oh, nice.
So if you guys are familiar with Tiger King at all, yeah, check it out, because that was a great episode. But yeah, I'm on YouTube, BitChute, Rumble, and Odyssey. Check me out, Divulgence Podcast, and then the audio is available anywhere you want. Subscribe, send me a message on Twitter, Divulgence Pod, say hey, anything, man. Come say hey, whatever. Check me out.
Get on this guy's show, because he does some pretty great stuff, and he has some pretty interesting conversations with some pretty great people. Also, Ryan Stone, I've got one of your channels here. What's your other channel called again?
The other one's Digital Ryan, but right now they're both kind of on pre-recorded stuff because I'm trying to finish book 2. So until the end of August, I promised myself no podcast, but damn it, you're persuasive.
I'm really stoked that you made it. And also, guys, don't act like that doesn't mean that there's a million episodes here worth watching. Like, I've been actually crushing on some of this stuff because he's got a great, and he's got his playlist too.
Oh, there's my favorite one, dude. That's my favorite thing the last 6 months, where Andrew Tate is pulling like a wrestling promo calling me an asshole.
Right. So I mean, these are clutch. I really think people, you gotta jump on to Ryan Stone, get yourself hooked onto some serious. I mean, if you want to get like tartar pilled, ruby pilled in your mouth, like it's a Ryan pill, I think is the way to go.
Well, thank you. I think.
How can we reach you, Ryan? How can I reach you?
Oh, the easiest way is Twitter. I've already added you on Divulge Podcast to my Twitter there. Twitter is the easiest one because that's the one I'm on most of the time. And then beyond that, honestly, just go to ryanstone.com/newsletter. So for my second book, it's working title is called Praxis. It's essentially everything about the red pill that marketers don't talk about. Thank God. That's actually effective with sex and relationships and that. You can sign up to that. And what happens is as I finish the editing, I release excerpts of that. So you can kind of follow the book in real time. It'll be the follow-up to Fuck Files, Lessons from a Decade of Women. It's like Jordan Peterson if you got laid more than once. So I don't mean to shit on him. I like the guy. I shouldn't even be saying that, but whatever.
It's changed when you meet people. Skydiving. What was that? This is the thing. I felt like you're either Joey B. Tunes or you are going to have to do something on the skydiving death of Canadian social media influencer Miss Canada semifinalist Tanya Pardazzi. And I'm not
pull the shoot.
I'm not trying to make you feel like she's like the most brave Canadian or something, but like it's definitely a story that needs to be explored.
Why not?
Vince,
yeah, that's me right there.
I love you. And Vince, also tell me if we're going to try to get in touch with you, Advanced Philosophy Means, what do you want?
You can find me on Facebook. I have an artist page, Vincent Smith Art Realm.
Let me jump. Hold on.
I put it in the chat here.
Oh, there we go. That's brilliant. Okay.
I'm also currently working with some friends. We have a group on Facebook called Mid Trip, and we're making some. We're adding some stuff there. If you want to see some of my circle of friends.
Absolutely. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna have to. I sent you guys the thing I'm making with Disco Diffusion instead of Mid Journey. Yeah. But some of the things I've been learning about is how you can take your pictures from Dolly 2, which you can see all the pictures I made of where's my Dolly 2 thing? Dolly.
Yeah.
You saw I had the Illuminati.
Yeah, I saw a bunch of them that you made. Yeah.
I made like Canadian. I made Canadian hockey players around a Masonic lodge table doing a ritual, which I thought was really fun.
Yeah, it's a little primitive.
Dolly?
Yeah, Dolly.
It's AI generated art. I'm a classic artist, but my friends are currently obsessed with AI generated art like Midjourney. So they're making websites for it. So like I'm trying to compete with AI art to basically up my game basically.
Right. I've been doing a bunch of AIR as well. So that's a thing to check out. And guys, if you also aren't a member, join Andreas Philosophy Memes, which we've got about 9,000 members now. And it's a messed up place. I'll tell you what. I mean, for a Facebook group, that's all I got. Be careful.
It's probably
the
best. It's the best Facebook group.
Yeah, I don't know how I get away with it. I don't know how I get away with it. But thank you guys for making it possible. And thank you for being here. And I'll see you again very soon. Ladies and gentlemen, MK Ultra Means, take care of yourself tonight.
Thank you for having us.